Okay, class, what we are doing is, good morning, come back again, and we are going to discuss the Harrod-Dommer model of growth, okay? Harrod-Dommer model of growth, right? Okay, now what exactly is this Harrod-Dommer model of growth? All right, very quickly, I told you all in the earlier lectures also, and I'm quietly taking a quick recap before we go to the slide where we had stopped last time. Okay, the Harrod-Dommer model, okay, talks about the role of savings and investment in the growth process. All right, and they say that savings and investment is very important in the process of growth. Now when we talk about growth, we are talking about economic growth of the economy, okay? And economic growth, I told you, is to increase the national income of the economy accompanied by economic development, okay? Both should happen more or less one behind the other. The economic growth moves ahead, which gives more scope for economic development. Okay. Then another reason why we study Harrod-Dommer model is there are certain similarities and dissimilarities between the Harrod-Dommer model. There are certain ideologies of Harrod and Dommer, okay, which are some similar, some dissimilar. So we try to integrate them, and we are going to look at the views of Harrod-Dommer model, okay? And we will call it the HD model, okay? So that you are able to understand that we are talking about the Harrod-Dommer model. Now, what has the HD model done so far? They have, okay, the HD model has, okay, tried to accumulate the classical school of thought, okay, as well as the Keynesian school of thought, plus they have given their own contribution to economic growth, okay, their own contribution to economic growth. All right, and in this process what they have done is that the HD model considers the classical economics also, it considers the Keynesian economics also, and they consider their own views also. Now if you recollect, okay, we began our study of macroeconomics for the second year by understanding what is the classical school of thought, okay? And I told you under classical school of thought, we had a simple understanding of a circular flow of national income in a 2x2 model, in a 2x3 model, 2x3 model, yes, okay, and a 2x2x2 model, okay? 2x2x2 model means again two countries, two sectors, and two, entire movement of exports and imports also take place. So we saw a 2-sector, a 3-sector, a 4-sector model which developed from the classical school of thought. Then we moved to the Say's law of market, where the essence of Say's law of market, which is also a part of classical school of thought, I told you all that supply creates its own demand. Okay, so the classicals believed in the supply side of economics, okay, and Keynes moved in the opposite direction, which is also considered by the HD model, okay? And what was Keynesian school of thought? Keynes and his followers said that more than the supply, it is the aggregate demand in the economy, which is very important. And what is the net objective of all the three theories, the HD model, the classical school of thought, and the Keynesian school of thought? The ultimate objective or aim is to achieve full employment, economic growth in the economy. Okay, so they all target at one particular variable, and that variable is to reach full employment economic growth. Okay, to reach full employment economic growth. So what HD model has done is it has combined the classical school of thought, it has combined the Keynesian school of thought, and in between they have also inserted their own understanding of accumulation of capital, which plays a very important role in the process of economic growth. Okay, this is also what they are trying to explain. Okay, so HDM, the last statement, if you look at, considers both the sides of investment process. Both the sides means it considers the demand side also, and it considers the supply side also. Okay, I hope you all have understood this much. Yes, so far so clear, class? Have you all understood this much?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Now let's move ahead. I told you what the essence is. Okay, in the earlier lecture, I also showed you all a small clipping of how important is capital accumulation in an economy. Okay, and too much of capital accumulation must not take place. Otherwise, in a labor-intensive economy, there is a possibility that too much of capital accumulation will drive the labor out of employment opportunities. Okay, so employment opportunities will go down, and even income opportunities will go down. So aggregate demand will suffer, income will suffer, consumption will suffer, and ultimate result is investments in the economy will come down. Okay, so that is something which must not happen, all right, by too much of capital accumulation. All right, this is something that needs to be understood. And I had explained up to the first point of the essence of HD model. Okay, HD model. Now, the essence of HD model is capital accumulation. Okay, savings and investment are the driving forces. The essence of Say's law of market is, or the classical theory is, very quickly, class, who will answer? The essence of Say's law is? What is the essence of Say's law? Yes, supply. Yes, I got the answer in the chat box. It is supply. So supply creates its own demand. And Keynesian essence is? Keynesian essence? Yes, Velan, you have mentioned supply creates its own demand, aggregate supply. Yes. Keynesian, it's demand. Okay, it is aggregate demand. All right, which is very important. Yes, very correct. It is aggregate demand, which is responsible for pulling the economy towards economic growth and economic development. Okay, all right. Now, what is the HD model finally telling us? Okay, what is the HD model finally trying to explain to us? Okay, now we come to this point. They say that if increase in capital, okay, increase in capital means, I have told you, capital accumulation in the economy. Okay, capital accumulation in the economy is made up of, I told you, yes, HDM is saving and investment. Very correct. Okay. If capital accumulation is unaccompanied by increase in income, okay, that means if you completely mechanize the production process in the economy without involving labor, without involving labor, or without providing employment opportunities to labor, then there is a possibility that income in the economy may not increase. Why income may not increase? Because complete mechanization would mean that labor will be out of job and only capital will get accumulated, and labor will be replaced or labor will be substituted by capital. And as a result of which, there will be too much of capital or excessive capital accumulation, which will lead to overproduction. Okay, and overproduction is nothing but surplus supply, all right, and eventually it will lead to fall in investment, and the economies can nosedive or plunge into what is called as depression. Okay, economies possibility is they can plunge into depression. Ye kaise hota hai? Now understand this. Okay, I told you there is too much of mechanization. Too much of mechanization means capital is replacing labor. Okay? Capital is replacing labor. Now, when capital is replaced by labor, the job which labor was doing, capital is doing. Okay? So, labor gets into the unemployment basket. He enters the unemployment basket. The moment labor is unemployed, okay, labor's income reduces. Okay? With a reduction in income, labor is not going to undertake demand. So demand in the economy comes down. When demand comes down, consumption comes down. When consumption comes down, again, savings come down. Okay, when savings come down, at the same time, the prices of the commodities may have to be reduced. Profits of the producers or the entrepreneurs will come down, or the capitalist will come down. The business firms will be left with unsold stocks of goods and services. That is, there will be unsold stocks, or in other words, there will be overproduction of goods and services, and the next round of production will be reduced. okay, and the next round of production will be reduced, which means that next round of investment will come down in the economy. And if this cycle circulates in a vicious manner, economies will plunge down or nosedive into what is called as a depression or a recession. It will plunge down into a depression or a recession. Okay, class? Yes. Are you all with me? Have you all understood this much? Give me an answer. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay. I'm getting those answers there. Right. Okay. All right. Now let's move to the next part. Okay. Now we understand the actual theory. Okay. Riya, your mic is on. How come you all don't understand these simple things? I've told you I've put the entire lecture in recording. Okay, right? Then we go to what is called as assumptions. Okay, now we actually begin the theory understanding. Okay, now we begin the understanding of the theory. Okay, it is beginning, you know, an assumption is made by the HD model that there is a full employment, income and employment that is existing in the economy. That means the economy is operating at a full employment level with a certain level of comfortable national income. Okay, so the economy is in a status quo, all right, and whatever activities are to take place, they are taking place normally and naturally. Okay, and there is full employment. So everything is operating in the most precise manner as needed. Okay, all right. Secondly, say that there is no government interference in the functioning of the economy. Okay, they also believed in minimum government interference. That is what this assumption tries to tell us. Okay, so there is minimum government interference also in the economy, right? Then thirdly, they say that there are no exogenous factors that are affecting the growth variables. Now, what are the growth variables, class? If you look at point number 4, you will find the automatic answer there. What are the growth variables? Okay, the growth variables are national income, national savings, investment, okay, national consumption, demand. Okay, all these are your macroeconomic variables, or what you call them as, okay, growth variables. All right, and they believe that there is no international trade. Okay, they believe in a closed economy system, so therefore they feel that there are no exogenous factors that are going to influence the growth variables. Okay, what are exogenous factors? Factors which are outside the control of an economy, okay, which happen in the world front, and therefore it affects us. Okay, and if it's affecting us, and if it's bringing the performance of the economy down, or if it is pushing the economy up, okay, it is called as an exogenous a shock for the economy. Now this exogenous shock can be positive also, it can be negative also. Like for example, the pandemic has brought the performance of our economy down. So it is an exogenous factor which has affected us negatively. But tomorrow, say for example, suddenly there is a huge increase in foreign direct investments that enter into our economy. Let us say there is flooding of FDI. Okay, and that FDI would mean that foreign firms are ready to invest in our economy, and huge investment takes place, and huge employment opportunities are created, and the economy booms. Okay, there is a prosperity period. Then that would be called as a positive exogenous shock for the economy. Okay, so exogenous factors are not going to affect us because we have assumed that the economy is comfortably at some level of full employment. Okay, and it is operating at that status quo, and all the activities are going on like the way it has to perform. So demand is perfect, consumption is perfect, employment is perfect. Okay, income earned by the people is perfect, and therefore economic growth is also quite normal and satisfactory. Okay, have you all understood these three assumptions, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Okay, so let's move further. All right, then the next assumption which they say is that there are no lags in adjustment. Meaning of lag is delay. Okay, delay. All right, there is no delay in any kind of economic adjustment. Okay, like for example, let me give you a quick example of how we adjust to these lags. All right, say for example, staple food, okay, for our economy is potatoes and onions. All right, suddenly there is increase in the price of both potatoes and onions. Okay, so what happens is the demand and supply start lagging, correct? The demand and supply start lagging. But from our side, how do we quickly adjust? We quickly reduce the demand for onions and potatoes because they have become very costly. Okay, because they have become very costly. So we start controlling our demand. All right, and what happens is the demand and supply tend to adjust in such a way that there isn't much of a lag. Okay, and very quickly the government will take measures, or maybe automatically the market supply disequilibrium will adjust to an equilibrium in such a way that supply of onions and potatoes will increase. All right, and again the prices will be normalized, correct? So whatever volatility enters the market, it will be quickly adjusted. Okay, and it has to be adjusted either from the demand side or from the supply side, and that happens in the economy. Okay, so that is what even they are talking about. They are saying that there are low delays in the adjustment of economic variables. What are these economic variables that are likely to quickly adjust? Okay, or they want them to be adjusted very quickly. Okay, these variables are, okay, macro variables, which I told you all before also: savings, investment, income, okay, expenditure. All right, adjust themselves very quickly in the same period. Okay, now how are these variables going to adjust? Suppose if savings are, going down in the economy, okay, savings are suddenly reducing, then there is a possibility monetary authorities may take a call and they may increase the rate of interest available on savings, let us say by 5%. Okay, so what happens? That 5% becomes an attraction to the people like you and me who do savings, and then we will start saving more. Okay, so quickly there is an adjustment on the saving front. Investment, suppose if investment is not happening, all right, and the economy wants the capitalists and the business entrepreneurs and the firms to invest more in the economy, all right, then there is a possibility they might offer credit, all right, or finance at a much lower rate of interest. Once this is given, it may stimulate investments in the economy. So again, there is a disturbance, and again, there is a quick adjustment. Okay. Similarly, when investments increase, okay, incomes of the factors of production will increase. The government may give in a fiscal correction. All right, it may reduce the taxes on incomes so that disposable incomes may increase. All right, and finally, the entire expenditure and consumption, okay, they both start adjusting in the economy because of all these economic variables and changes that are taking place. Okay, all right. Any change in the savings brings about corresponding change in investment in the same period. Okay, any change in savings brings about corresponding change in investment in the same period, because generally it is believed, okay, that S is equal to I. If you remember, okay, that equation when we did the classical, okay, theory, and when we did Say's law of market, they always kept saying that S is ultimately going to be equal to I. So savings are going to be equal to investment at some point of time, all right, with all the so-called quick lags and adjustments that take place in the economy. Okay, so that is why it is believed by the HD model that savings and investment will also be together, all right, in order to promote economic growth and economic development and adjustments. Okay, have you all quickly understood? Give me a quick yes. Class, you all are there? And am I audible? Okay, there comes your yes in the chat boxes. Okay, great. Okay. Fine. Okay, we'll proceed further now. We'll look at the other assumptions also. Okay, right. What are the other assumptions now? Now we actually start entering the HD model with the variables which Harrod and Domar are using. Okay, they say propensity to save. Okay, average propensity to save. Okay, is given by a small equation. Okay, average propensity to save is also written as APS, capital. Average propensity to save is equal to S upon Y. What is S? S is savings, Y is income. All right. Now, when we talk about average propensity to save, okay, and average propensity to save out of the given income, it means that over the life cycle of an individual, okay, over the life cycle of an individual, when he is earning an income, all right, let us say he starts earning income at the age of 20 and he completes the process of earning his income by 60 years of life, okay, when he retires, all right, in between that time period, he is going to undertake consumption, okay, and that consumption is going to generate demand also, and it is going to generate savings also, because whenever he undertakes consumption out of his income, his entire income is going to be split up into two more variables. What is it? Y is equal to C plus. Y is equal to C plus. Class, answer. Y is equal to C plus. Hello. Y is equal to C plus. No. No, Y is equal to C plus. Shalini, answer is not correct. No, not even G. No, not I plus G, not I. Y is, yes, yes. Kunika has got it right. Y is equal to C plus S. Income is always going to be, okay, split into consumption and savings. I'm talking of an individual who is going to complete his life cycle earning from the age of 20 to 60 years, then his entire income, okay, is going to be Y is equal to C plus S. Some part he is going to consume and the remaining part he is going to save, and what he saves over his entire life cycle, okay, is called as average propensity to save, okay, is called average propensity to save. And this average propensity to save class is not of one individual, but all the individuals in the economy who are earning incomes, okay, who are earning incomes, okay. My voice is breaking, then it is not a problem on my side. It could be a problem on your side because of net issues, okay. All right, right. Okay, so we are talking about average propensity to save, okay. I hope you all understood what is average propensity to save, all right. So over a period of his entire life cycle, how much the individual saves is called as APS, okay. And then you have what is called as marginal propensity to save. Now, what is marginal propensity to save? In that entire time period of his work process, whenever he is employed, this individual is going to earn income, okay. And in the process of earning income, the individual, okay, is likely to expect some promotions, okay. He is likely to expect a hike in his income, and he will experience an increase in the income which is given to him by his employer or by the firm, okay, for whatever work that he has done. So what happens is, let us say that the income of this individual increases from 5,000 to 6,000, okay. So what has happened, his marginal income has increased, correct, and that increase in marginal income is by 1,000, all right, is by 1,000. Now, out of that 1,000, how much more is he going to consume and how much more is he going to save is called as marginal propensity to save. Let us say out of that marginal 1,000 rupees of income that he gets, he is going to use 100 rupees for savings and 900 he is going to save. So MPS is equal to 900. Okay, MPS is equal to 900. Have you all understood, class? Okay, so marginal propensity to save is always more. Okay, marginal propensity to save is always more, because when an individual starts earning more income, his capacity, okay, to save also increases. His capacity to save also increases. Now, have you all understood what is APS and MPS, class? Have you all understood APS and MPS? Okay, yes. All right. all right? Okay, I've got only one yes so far. What about the others? Ma'am, will you repeat MPS? Okay, I'll repeat it. Okay. Marginal propensity to save is out of the additional income or marginal income which the person earns. Okay, out of that, how much he is going to consume and how much he is going to save. Like when you get a hike in your pocket money, okay, out of that pocket money, you're not going to spend every amount, correct? Out of that extra pocket money that you get, you are going to keep aside some amount, okay? The same logic applies to MPS also, okay? So I hope you understood what is APS and what is MPS, okay? Now what is assumed by HDM model? Average propensity to save and marginal propensity to save are equal to each other, okay? Now this is a very out of the box assumption made by HDM model, okay? Because in reality, APS and MPS can never be equal, all right? It is generally said APS is always more and MPS is always a little less, because out of your marginal income, how much you consume is one part, and out of your total income of your life cycle, okay, how much you have consumed and how much you have saved is a different percentage altogether, okay? But since it is an assumption and it is easy for them to write the theory, okay, that is why this assumption prevails, okay? So APS and MPS are equal to each other. Absolute change in saving is equal to relative change in saving. So since they are assuming it, we will accept it as it is, okay? Propensity to save, okay, how much the people in the economy or individuals in the economy, okay, are able to save, okay, that is propensity to save. Propensity to save and capital coefficient. Capital coefficient is nothing but capital output ratio, okay, which is also called as finally terminating to investment. It is ICOR, incremental capital output ratio, or capital output ratio also determines nothing but investments, okay? It is investment. So propensity to save and capital output ratio have a connection, and that connection is from one variable, and that variable is I, or investment. Okay, that variable is investment. Now, how is that going to happen? All right. Now, say for example, they are saying that savings are going to remain constant as long as they are, you know, trying to explain this theory to us. Okay, when they are using the variables to calculate, okay, savings are going to remain constant, and they also believe that capital output ratio is also going to remain constant. Now, what exactly is meant by capital output ratio? Okay, this example I'm giving, you all try to understand now. One machine is going to produce 20 glasses. Okay, one machine is going to produce 20 glasses. So what is the ratio class? It is 1:20. Okay, 1:20, meaning 1 unit of capital is able to produce how much output? How much output?
20.
20.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so I have a capital output ratio which says that it is 20, correct? So 1 unit of machine requires, 1 unit of machine is going to be needed to produce 20 units of a glass. Okay, so COR is 1:20. Agreed? You all are with me? Okay, now answer to me. If 100 glasses are to be produced, what is going to be the COR? Okay, what is COR? Capital output ratio. 1:20 glasses. So 100 glasses is to how many units of capital do we need? There, I have a chat box flashing. Let's see what's the answer there. Yes.
Ma'am, will you repeat the question?
Yes. Answer given by Akshay is correct. Okay, I told you 1 unit of capital, all right, is going to produce 20 units of glasses. So if I want 100 units of glasses, how much of capital am I going to need, or how much of machines will I need, or how much of technology is needed? Okay, very correct, Akshay. And you said 5 machines will help me to produce, okay, all right, 100 glasses. 2000 कहाँ से आ गया? Okay, why am I getting 2000 as the answer? All right. Oh, okay. Right. So that is my way of trying to tell you is only this, that capital output ratio, okay, depends on nothing but how much of capital is required to produce how much units of output. Okay. The more the capital accumulation, the more will be the output produced. Okay, class, the more the capital accumulation, the more will be the output produced. Why? Because definitely the more the number of machines, the more is the mass production. Agreed? Okay, the more the machines, the more is the mass production. Correct? Have you all understood these so-called assumptions so far? Okay. Yes, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Then the law of constant returns operated because of fixity of capital output ratio. Okay. And they believe that, you know, the entire law is a constant law as far as capital output ratio is concerned. Okay. Now let's move ahead. Okay. Right. Okay. Assumption number 7. What are they saying? Income. Whose income? Whose income? Our incomes? Incomes of all factors of production, yes or no? Class? It is income of all. Okay, let's see, your chat boxes are flashing. Yes, income of all individuals. Yes, so it is income of all. Okay, it is income of all. Okay, all right. Income, investment. Investment is undertaken by the capitalist or business entrepreneurs. Okay, right? Or the firms, correct? And savings. Savings are undertaken by majority by the households. Okay, that is by you and me, correct? We represent the household category, right? So we are the ones who are going to undertake maximum level of savings. Okay, so income, investment, and savings are all defined in the net sense. It implies that these variables exclude depreciation. Okay, now what is income? Income is what remains after C plus S. I hope you all are understanding. Okay, income that remains after consumption and savings. Huh? Okay. Investment is depending upon the rate of interest. So after paying the rate of interest, whatever is invested is investment. Savings is again going to depend upon consumption. So whatever is consumed and then what is left goes in the form of savings. Correct, class? So that is called as net sense. Okay, net sense. Something is subtracted, okay, and then what remains is the income, investment, and savings. All right, all of which are going to be utilized for further capital accumulation in the economy. Okay, according to the HD model. Okay. Saving and investment are equal. Okay, remember classical theory says law of markets. I told you ultimately S is equal to I. Circular flow of income, 3-sector model also I had told you S is equal to I. Are you all able to recollect? Are you all able to recollect? Yes or no? Savings is ultimately going to be equal to investment. Okay, savings is ultimately going to be investment. Yes, yes, correct. You are able to say yes again. Okay, right. So saving and investment are equal in ex ante and ex post sense. That means prior to the new change and even after the new change. Okay, that is ex ante and ex post. Okay, savings are going to remain similar. Okay, they are going to remain in the equal sense, in the accounting sense also, and even in the functional equality sense also. Accounting sense is where you calculate savings and investment, and functional means, okay, it means that savings is a function of rate of interest and investment is also a function of the rate of interest. That is a functionality equality, correct? Have you all understood what is functional equality? S is a function of rate of interest and I is also a function of rate of interest. Only thing is one is inversely related and one is directly related. Higher the rate of interest, higher the savings. Lower the rate of interest, Okay, lower the rate of interest, larger is the investment. So investment and savings are indirectly or inversely related. Okay, that is the functional relationship. Okay, so with this background, they start introducing equations in the economy. Okay, now what are these equations? You have SO is equal to IO, okay, in the accounting equality sense. Okay, so in the final sense or in the ultimate sense, as set by Say's law of market, as understood under the circular flow of income in the three-sector model, and as assumed by the classicals, savings is ultimately equal to investments at some point in time. Okay, so S is going to be equal to I. समझ में आ गया class? Okay, S is equal to I in the accounting sense. Correct? Okay. Then we look at functional equality. It is given as SE is equal to IE. It's a functional equality. Matlab we are coming more closer to economics. Okay, we are coming more closer to economics. Right? Niche dekho. SO and IO are observed savings and investments. That is what is observed in the economy and that is what is noted down. Okay, India's savings is so and so, India's investment is so and so. Okay, so SO for India, let us say for example, is 33% and investment in India is, let us say, 28%. Okay, so these are observed data or figures. Okay, so in the accounting sense, we have SO and IO as 33 and 28. Okay, now come to the next one. SE and IE, we are talking about functional equality, okay, and they are going to be called as expected saving and expected investment. Okay, let us say expected savings in India, okay, need to be 34%. We are already at 33, but we want to be at 34%. Okay, so ye ho gaya SE, and IE, all right, should be at least 33.5%. SE must be at least 33.5%. Are you understanding? For S equal to I equality. For S equal to I equality. Okay, and I told you in our example, okay, savings is 33%, whereas investment is only 28%. So there is a lag. Investment needs to increase. Investment has to go up. Okay, so expected savings, let us say we want 34%, and expected investment, let us say, in order to fulfill S equal to I, okay, India's so-called investment must at least go up to 33.5%. So it is almost close to S equal to I. Okay, all these assumptions are necessary, but not the final solution to the problem, because assumptions are assumptions. Assumptions are conditions being constant. We try to move ahead in understanding the HD model. Okay, right class. Now tell me, have you all understood what we have done so far? Okay, give me a quick yes or a thumbs up. Okay, give me a quick yes or a thumbs up. Let's see. I'm getting yes in the chat boxes. Okay. All right. And let me see the screen of your thumbs ups. What is it? No thumbs ups on the screen? Okay, here. There is something on screen number 2. Riya says okay, Kaushik okay, Mirat is okay. Yes, Dhruvi, Aksh, okay, Riddhi, okay, all of you all are saying yes. Okay, yes, there are a few more also who are saying yes. Right, okay. And even in the chat boxes, there are sufficient yes. Okay, so let's go back to the screen and okay, just one more small part we will do for the day, and you know, then we could stop. Okay, all right, so the assumptions are clear. Okay, now before going to the next slides, okay, let me quickly recollect what we did, class. Okay, now y'all are going to answer. You can unmute yourself. Shall I unmute you all, class? Shall I unmute you all? Okay, or individually you can unmute, otherwise there'll be too much of chaos. Okay, all right. What does the classical what does the HD model believe in? The HD model believes in
Saving and investment.
Investment and savings.
yes, they believe that savings and investment are important. Okay, and they also believe in something. See, I'm
Supply
annotating
and
here.
demand. Supply and demand.
No, they don't believe in supply and demand. Watch the screen carefully. I'm annotating it, what it means. HDM model also believes in
Capital accumulation.
capital accumulation. Okay, so the HDM model believes in savings, investment, and capital accumulation are important for economic growth of the economy. Okay, and that is the essence of their model. Whereas the classicals believed in, the classical school of thought believed in, the classical school of thought believed in,
Aggregate supply.
yes, they believed that supply is more important than demand. And what was their famous statement made by them? What is the famous statement made by them?
Supply creates its own demand.
Supply creates its own demand. Very correct. Okay. What did Keynesian school of thought and Keynes focus on? Keynes believed in
Aggregate demand.
aggregate demand. Very correct. Okay, Keynes depended on aggregate demand. Okay, so the ultimate economic growth according to HD model is an integration of all these economic variables. Okay, what are these economic variables? Okay, see over here they are saying it is savings, it is investment, it is capital accumulation, okay, it is aggregate demand, and it is aggregate supply. Okay, all this taken together will help the economy to reach economic growth and also what is called as the level of full employment in the economy. Okay, and for this purpose they want, okay, they want the savings to be equal to investment, which depends on the accounting side also, okay, which depends on the accounting equality and which also depends upon the functional equality. And they believe, okay, they means HD, okay, Harrod and Dommer believe that there should not be much of lags in investment and savings. Okay, there should be a quick adjustment, and that is why they say that SO and IO are observed existing rates of savings in the economy and investment, which you can also call it as actual saving and actual investment. Okay, remember, in an economy, it is never easy to equate savings and investment. It is always easy to say that savings must be equal to investment. It is always easy to say. But in reality, class, in reality, okay, savings and investment are always one behind each other. Okay, sometimes savings is ahead and investment is trying to catch up. Okay, or at times investment is ahead and people are trying to save more. Okay, and people are trying to save more. All right, but in the process of economic development and especially in a developing economy, okay, both savings and investment have to move ahead. Okay, they have to move ahead, and it has to be like, you know, one moving ahead and the other chasing behind. Okay, the variables could be any. The variables could be any. Any means savings can be ahead of investment, then investment must catch up. All right, or investment is ahead and savings must increase so that there can be more investment in the economy. All right, but savings must not increase so much that demand dies out. No, you cannot allow demand to suppress in an economy, because if demand suppresses, you know, the economy, according to Keynesian economics and according to the HD understanding also, okay, the economy may enter into, okay, recession and depression, which should not happen. Okay, which should not happen. Correct, class? Right. So I hope till now you have understood the the HD model or the Harrod-Dommer model, right? Okay, give me a quick yes, or if you have any questions, do ask. Okay, yes, yes, I'm getting yeses in the chat boxes. Yes, ma'am, understood so far. Okay, great. All right, great. Right, okay, all right. Now I will take you to the actual working of the HD model. Okay, how does the Harrod-Dommer model work? Okay, right? We will do this slide for the day today and then we will stop, because if you have understood this much, so far so good. Okay, we will understand this part and we will stop for the day today. Okay, the Harrod-Domar model. Okay, we are talking of only the Harrod model first. Remember, Harrod model, Domar model, and then we are going to merge and integrate the Harrod-Domar model because they appear to be slightly similar. Okay. The Harrod model is based on 3 growth rates. Acha, ek tha ki there was only one single growth rate till now that we understood. Now Harrod model talks about 3 growth rates. Okay, 3 growth rate. What are those 3 growth rates? One is the actual growth rate, which is denoted by G. Okay, actual growth rate is what is existing and what is there in the economy is an actual growth rate. Okay, like say for example, in today's time period, okay, if we say that economies are experiencing a negative growth rate, then the actual growth rate is negative. Okay, so much so that many of the economists, okay, and even in the media it has been speculated, and even rating agencies have pointed out to us that India's GDP, okay, in the pandemic period is negative. So what is the actual growth rate today, or what is G according to Harrod-Domar today for India? It is negative. Okay, it is negative. Correct? Have you all understood what is actual growth rate? Yes, class? Have you all understood actual growth rate according to Harrod?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah. How is it determined? It is determined by saving ratio and capital output ratio. Okay. Kaise? Savings is invested and investment is going to create capital output ratio. That is, there will be output produced. Okay. And that is what is going to give us actual growth rate. All right. Now, in the economy, if savings are increasing, okay, it will lead to increase in investment. Increase in investment will lead to increase in what is called as increase in the output of the economy. Okay. And there will be an ultimate increase in the income. Okay. It will be an ultimate increase in the growth rate, that is national income of the economy. Okay, all right. It shows short-run cyclical variation in the rate of growth. All right, short-run fluctuations are always there. There has to be ups and downs. Okay, and it's not easy to reach, okay, a actual growth rate. It is always going to happen with ups and downs. Okay, then there is something called as warranted growth rate, which is denoted by GW. Warranted growth rate means that is full capacity growth rate of income in an economy. Okay, it is the full capacity growth rate of income in the economy. Let us say the Indian economy has the fullest capacity to grow, okay, to a maximum of what? A double digit, okay, increase in national income. If India reaches full employment, okay, then that will be the fullest, okay, growth rate which India can achieve. That is called as full capacity growth rate. All right. And today, India is not even closer to its full capacity. There's a lot of capacity for the Indian economy to grow. Okay. So G is what we are. GW is what we are going to have in future. Okay. And that is what we want to achieve. All right. And finally, there is a natural growth rate denoted by GN. Okay. Natural growth rate, you can say it is average growth rate of the economy over a period of time. Okay. Just say average growth rate before 1991 was a Hindu growth rate of 4%. Okay. But after the economic reforms in 1991, the average growth rate of the economy has been quite high. Okay. So that is the natural growth rate. Have you all understood these 3 points? Okay, you have 3 growth rates according to Harrod. Actual, what is already there. Okay, warranted rate of growth, GW, which we have to actually reach and we have the capacity to reach there. Okay, all right, which is calculated by statisticians and economists for us. All right, and GN is the natural growth rate of the economy, where the economy is bound to grow. Okay, if there is savings, if there is investment, if there is consumption, if there is demand, and if there is income, and if there is supply and employment. Okay, class, I will stop here for the day. All right. And I hope you all have understood. Okay, there is one small question in the chat box. Okay, somebody has asked me, Akshay is asking me, can you repeat the 8th point again? If it is the assumption of the 8th point, Akshay, all right, I will take it up again tomorrow or in the next lecture. Is it clear to you? Yes. Okay. Spare me because we are now, almost the time is ending up. So I would like to stop for the day. Okay. Because I don't want y'all to move out of whatever y'all have understood. Right, class? Okay. Yes. So I think that is it for the day, class. All right. And that is what we are trying to understand in an HD model. Okay. In an HD model. Right. Okay. Let's quickly take up a poll question if I'm able to give you all, and we can end for the day. Okay. We can end for the day. Right. I'm not getting the connectivity for a poll question. Yes, the recording of the lecture is making the net slow. Okay, here it is, very quickly. Okay, let's see. I'll quickly put a question. Okay, the question is just coming up for y'all. Okay, here it is. Right. Okay, let's get a quick answer for this from y'all, class. Perfect. Okay, see, I got 33 students who are saying that the HD model believes in what is capital accumulation is important for the HD model. Very correct, class. Okay, so you all have answered precisely. All right, and that is it for the day, class. I will end the lecture and we will meet again in the next class and we'll continue with the HD model. Okay, right? Okay, good day, class.